Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Jackie Hurd Barber, and a member of the M-Cubed Advisory Board and proud graduate of MPS. Welcome to the M-Cubed Education Transformed webinar, meeting the urgent needs of 100,000 plus students during COVID-19. M-Cubed is transforming the future of our young people and Milwaukee communities through the power of public education by multiplying the impact of Milwaukee Public Schools, Milwaukee Area Technical College, and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Many of you joining us today know M-Cubed. For those who don't, this MPS, MATC, and UWM partnership has helped increase MPS high school graduation rates, helped more students get prepared for college by completing the FAFSA, and increased the number of MPS graduates going directly to college. And now, we're beginning to see the greater college level success on which we have been focused. More MPS graduates are successfully completing college level math and English and continuing on to a second year, both at MATC and UWM. While M-Cubed is transforming the future of education, COVID-19 is transforming education itself. Through this series, M-Cubed Education Transformed, MPS, MATC, and UWM will share how they are adapting to this new environment, meeting students' needs, and staying on track to help even more students succeed. This series is sponsored by these fellow M-Cubed Advisory Board members. And those are Ellen Gilligan, Greater Milwaukee Foundation, Joanne Anton, Director of Charitable Giving, Herb Cole Philanthropies, Linda Gorns-Levy, partner with General Capital, Jose Olivieri, partner with Michael Beston Friedrich, Mark Sablejack, founder and owner of Sablejack and Budish, Tim Sheehy, president, Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce, and Julia Taylor, president of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. Today's session focuses on meeting the urgent needs of 100,000 plus students MATC, MPS, and UWM served during COVID-19. Many M-Cubed students from underrepresented groups are students of color, students from low-income households, English language learners, and more. COVID-19, the resulting economic crisis, and an overdue confrontation with racial injustice have all had a disproportionate impact on these students. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing friends that are passionate about and committed to ensuring all people, young and mature, have access to a quality education, and they also happen to serve as leaders of these three fine institutions. Dr. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, Dr. Vicki Martin, President of MATC, and Dr. Mark Money, Chancellor of UWM. They will share with you the areas of the greatest student need, what's been done to meet those needs so far, and what will be done to address those needs that still haven't been met. They'll also be taking your questions, so please submit them through the Q&A feature right here in Zoom. First, each sponsor will give you a brief update of the state of their organization to give some broader context. We'll begin with Dr. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools. Dr. Posley?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Jackie Hurd Barber, for being our moderator, and thank each of you for joining us today. I'm the proud superintendent of the Milwaukee Public Schools, and it is an honor to be here today with my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Martin and Dr. Money. I would like to recognize the M-Cubed Advisory Board members that may be present with us this evening. And I will start by saying that we experienced an abrupt change when we changed from face-to-face learning this past spring due to COVID-19. As a result of our students and staff making this pivot to online teaching and learning, we had to pull together a pandemic response team. And this group's responsibility was to make sure that we ensured the health and safety of our students and staff, to make sure that we provided quality instruction, as well as supporting our students and staff, and also facilitating efficient and safe operations and effectively communication with all of our key stakeholders. And we provided instructional materials to all of our staff, all of our students via our staff. And then we converted to online learning. And we have developed we took this summer to develop our staff doing PD around all our Google Suites and Seesaw for our youngest learners. And with all of that, we knew that we had to do something for our families. So we had to ensure that parents and guardians had access to our portal so that they would know exactly what was going on in the learning process of their young person. So we provided professional development around that for our parents to make sure that we were moving in the right direction and everyone was going along with us. In July, we decided to move to a phased in approach. And in phase 1 was going to be totally remote learning, where we are right now. And phase 2 was hybrid learning with some remote and some face-to-face. And in phase 3 was this whole thing of back to face-to-face, but also giving families an option of staying remote for the total year if they decided to do so. And we open up the 2021 school year on August 17th for high schools and middle schools. And then on September 1st, we open up for the additional schools that were not already open. We also continued throughout the process to provide 20 stop, grab, and go meal sites throughout the city of Milwaukee. And then as the school year started, we added additional sites, and we are up to 50 sites now that we are providing services for, providing meal services throughout the day from 11:30 to 1:30. We have also been able to provide fresh fruit and vegetables for our families because we have a number of families that may be in need, and we're working through that with our families. And then we also have 3 extended hours, 3 schools with extended hours for meals throughout the year as well. And we have also opened up with some of our CLCs, as well as our safe places, camps, and recreation activities, so that young people will have a place to be. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Martin. Dr. Martin.
Okay, thanks, Keith, and thanks, Jackie, for your support, as well as our advisory board. It's really great to be here with my colleagues, both Keith and Mark. We've been part of this partnership since 2014, and I think that we've done some great things together. But let's talk about where we are right now. We've been able to pivot, adapt, innovate, and respond pretty quickly to COVID-19. In spring, specifically St. Patrick's Day, we transitioned more than 1,300 classes online in just a matter of weeks. I have to really thank our faculty who quickly responded. They had the support of some of their peers who had been online for quite a while, as well as our online support team and our IT folks. And then in summer, we brought back to campus those classes that had to be held in person, whether it was based on accreditation requirements or just the reality of the profession. We ensured social distancing in hallways and classrooms. We had temperature checks upon entry and health and safety training for all employees and students. This fall, about 60% of our classes are online, another 20% are in person, 10% are a mix of online and in person, and the remainder are apprenticeships and clinical opportunities that take place off-site. And you may know that many of our clinical sites are now closing to our students, given the recent increase in COVID-19 cases with hospitalization. And for spring, we're planning to continue the same percentage breakdown of online and in-person classes, but we're offering more 8-week and late start classes to help accommodate COVID. With that, I'll introduce and turn it over to Dr. Mark Money. Mark?
Dr. Martin, thank you. Dr. Posley, I'm just so honored to work with you all and our advisory board for M-Cubed. It's just a terrific organization that we've built. I always like to say we cut our hands and signed in blood, and we are bound to each other. And for Milwaukee, I think the most important thing for our audience to know is just how committed we are to each other. Public education is one of the most important things happening in the state of Wisconsin, and the state of situation for over 100,000 students is our future, and this is critical. And so that commitment has been there. and we're going to continue to drive through. We're all different, but I'm going to talk just for a moment about the state of business, and then I look forward to talking to you about how we have needs and how we're meeting those needs, as you'll hear from my colleagues. We pivoted also, and I think that's the name of the game. And one of the points that I like to make is it's not just going online, it's how effectively you go online. We're seeing that play out in educational situations every single day for families, for students, for those of us that are responsible for our educational environments. Much like Dr. Posley and Dr. Martin have said, it's rooted in a foundation of health and safety. That's foundational. That's absolutely critical. In the world that we're in Wisconsin, as well as the rest of the United States, this is not easy, but we've got a lot at stake, and we take that very seriously. For us at UWM, the dimensions that were important, of course, is the modality. So much like what you've already heard, today we're about 60% online, 22% face-to-face, the rest is hybrid. But let's talk about on-campus living. We went from having almost 4,600 students to today less than 1,900. So we're at about 45% of our normal residency. But that, from a risk mitigation to really keep the numbers low on campus, is the smart thing to do. We obviously have a lot fewer employees on campus. We're doing a lot of remote learning as well as remote working. We're putting so many of our support services online, from telehealth to different types of EAP programs that are much more accessible. A lot of things we'll talk about when we get into many of the specific dimensions. The training has been a big part of UWM. I'm sorry, the cultural training around safety and health, but also the testing and attestation. And so we're today testing about 300 students, and I'm really happy to say that our residential students are quite low. In fact, I think one of the safest places to be in Milwaukee is one of our campuses. We have residential population that's slightly higher in terms of, non-residential that's slightly higher, but we're expanding dramatically based on some conversations happening literally today, where we'll be doing additional testing for our community and a lot of additional individuals. We think that colleges can play a really important front line. Bottom line, what's happened? State of things. Some people have expressed some concern about online learning. I think you're going to hear that across the board from our students because they don't have some of the relationships, some of the bonding, some of the face-to-face, the body language, and those things. But there's been some unintended consequences, and they're very positive. A lot of students have come forward and said, I can, especially in technical courses, I can have more time to repeat and go through. I can learn more about the math. I can learn more about the engineering. I can learn more about some of the skills. And so they get that repetition. Some people really like the online learning because they're saying faculty are getting a lot better at this online type of situation. So there's some really neat things, as well as faculty saying, I'd never go online, but today they're saying the rest of my career, I will have a number of courses online. I'll never go completely back because they see the advantages. They see the ways to engage, create chat rooms, create relationships and bonding that they couldn't always do in larger classes. So there's some real wins that we're already seeing. So with that, back to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Dr. Mone, Dr. Martin, and Dr. Posley for sharing the state of your institutions. I want to shift a bit to the core of our discussion today, and that's meeting the urgent needs of the students during COVID-19. I want each of you to talk about what those needs are, what you've done already, and what you still need to do to meet those needs. Dr. Posley, we'll start with you once again, and then follow with Dr. Martin and Dr. Mone.
Thank you. As you know, Milwaukee Public Schools, we educate children from age 3 to young people throughout 12th grade and every educational program that you can imagine. MPS has a very diverse student population in respect to ethnic groups, languages, as well as lived experiences. And, that is one thing that I just tell everyone that has just been the fabric that has really held us together as well. And none of us would have ever imagined that we would be experiencing this current situation. This pandemic has, placed up on all of us and it's changed the way we live as well as how we survive. And I would just like to recognize the pouring out support that the Milwaukee community has offered. And when I consider the greatest need of our students and our staff, I would include, number one, just ensuring the mental, social, and physical safety and well-being of all of our students and staff. And you know that all of our students and staff miss this social interaction, social aspect of being around each other. We also understand the importance of social distancing, we recognize that it's a challenge. Students miss the interaction with sports and clubs and friends and the different activities that they can partake in. And the adults, as well as the students, may be dealing with, sickness from loved ones and the loss of loved ones. And then also being able to talk about the pandemic with our students, and it can be a difficult process. And we have all had to blend in with this whole thing and embed social emotional learning in everything that we do throughout our lessons with our young people to increase the support and working with self-care. So we're making sure that all of those things are in place. But the other area that I would spend some time talking about is providing rigorous instruction for all of the students we serve. That has been something that we have constantly been working to make sure that we just do that, and especially our youngest learners, because we know sometimes that virtual learning may not work for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old as well, may not work for some of our various groups of students that may need that extra attention or whatever the situation may be. And then also trying to make sure that rigor is there when we have various programs like our IB programs or AP programs, making sure that our young people are able to to take part in apprenticeships and a number of things of that nature. That's part of that rich academic fabric that we are so accustomed to. And also the other piece will making sure that we continue to and operating from a fiscal responsible and a sound manner. And we look at that, and some of the things that come to mind is the idea we have distributed Chromebooks for students since the initial start of the close due to the pandemic. And we have also had to add 3 different hubs throughout the city to make sure that our young people are able to be able to pick up devices, hotspots, computers, and things of this nature. But just the idea of leaning in and working together and making sure that our young people are able, as well as staff, to have the necessarily PPE that is needed for our buildings, and making sure that all of the PPE is in place. And we have set aside basically and almost spent over $51 million right out the gate on PPE and making sure that those things are in place for our learners. But also the bridging that digital divide that we have within the state of Wisconsin and around the country, but in particular in Milwaukee, and just kudos to the Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation for their support to close that digital divide, and also people like Tina Chain, who stepped in to make sure that we were able to provide those necessary services for all of our young people going forward, so that we are able to close that gap in the great digital divide that we see within the city. But with all of that, making that transition and making things happen for young people. And the last piece is this whole thing I talked about, diversity being our strength. We have to make sure that we are communicating with all stakeholders, and the translation and interpretation services for our school community. And we're translating into basically 7 or 8 different languages, and making sure that we can communicate with all of our families. So I will stop there and turn it over to Dr. Martin.
Okay, thanks, Keith. I think you're going to hear some common themes between what Keith said and I'm about to present, and then Mark. But for us, our biggest student needs are in 4 key areas. One, you heard a little bit about this already, mental health. The second one is basic needs like food and housing. The third is financial need. And then the fourth, which you heard a little bit about as well, is digital divide. So let's start with mental health. and Mark, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but you brought it up yesterday at the Rotary, and I've seen these results at Weld that what's keeping presidents up at night and chancellors up at night across the country is the mental health of their students and their staff and faculty. So one of the greatest needs right now of our students in the midst of this pandemic is learning how to navigate this new normal with all the stress that they're feeling. There's no set of established rules or protocols for how to move forward, how to take a break, how to slow down in the midst of a global pandemic. And because of the health, income, and other disparities, our students are being adversely impacted disproportionately, as you heard earlier. Our Student Resource Center has developed virtual means for our students to reach them and to provide more mental health programming during the school year. More specifically, we've increased the number of suicide prevention programs and stress and management programs available to our students. We're promoting them so much more than we did in the past. We also have counselors who can talk to students in person or virtually to help offer support and community referrals if needed. You can imagine many of our students want to talk to someone in person, and that's just part of some of the stress they're experiencing. They're home with their families, that maybe they don't have childcare available. They're trying to maybe help their children learn at home. There's just a lot going on right now. And mental health, as we know, is very much linked to the instances of racial injustice that we're seeing. And our student life team has offered culturally responsive opportunities for students to learn and share their feelings and thoughts. They've already had a number of panels of experts, both nationally, locally, as well as some of our staff to be able to talk about what the issues are and what we can learn from them as we move forward. So a next step would be to meet the needs of these students to continue to improve our student life online presence to really help them to really address these needs that they have. With respect to food, again, our Student Resource Center partners with Hunger Task Force to actually provide access to food. We do have a pantry. We've tried to figure out how they can pick up some groceries that they need through the Hunger Task Force. You also probably have read that we're expanding student housing in the former Journal Sentinel building, which will be ready in August of 2021. And that really is around making sure that they have stable housing while they're attending school. I'd like to thanks to the Coles Cares. We got a grant to develop a more robust set of resources for our students to access food pantries and to learn more about healthy food and nutrition, which we know helps the immune system and helps to combat COVID. The digital divide is very real for our students. To combat it, as you heard Keith, we distributed also 2,300 Chromebook laptops. We did nearly 1,000 this fall semester alone. We also made 250 Wi-Fi hotspots available through the library. We expanded the Wi-Fi into our parking lots and opened computer labs with social distancing for students who didn't have access. And we believe we met the urgent needs here, and we'll continue to offer Chromebooks, hotspots, and all of those access components. As you can imagine, at our institution, sometimes they need more complex software. And so we've had to look at being able to offer laptops as well for our students with more advanced capabilities. And finally, the financial impacts are real. We distributed more than $4 million in CARES Act assistance to more than 5,000 students who are struggling with housing, transportation, health, food, or other COVID-related emergency needs. We were required to spend more than half of our federal CARES funds on direct student support, and recognizing our student needs, we chose to exceed that 50%. And so we set aside 75% for direct student support. We also pushed FAFSA completion through a phone call and digital ad campaign so that students wouldn't miss out on federal dollars to help pay for college. Our foundation has also been laser focused on helping students during this pandemic. They're partners with our student life team in the Dream Keepers emergency grants. And what we have found through this is that as little as $400 can help students complete their last semester. And thanks to our donors, they provided this completion scholarship to more than 150 students. Thanks to United Health Foundation and other partners, we provided 275 students graduating with healthcare programs with scholarships to cover exam fees that can cost as much as $1,500, which is another huge barrier for them right now. And books can be a huge barrier. Oftentimes, books can cost more than our tuition. And so our foundation has designated $50,000 in funding this year to award book scholarships to students who are enrolled in at least 3 credits and have financial need but aren't eligible for financial aid. This can include DACA students. So books continue to be an area of unmet need in normal times, and that's exacerbated by this pandemic. Beyond the scholarships I mentioned, we're moving towards more open educational resources. These are online free resources so that the cost of books is eliminated entirely. We've managed to do this for our incarcerated students through our Second Chance Pell, and it's been very successful, and we hope to really expand it for our students. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Money. Mark?
Thanks, Dr. Martin. And the advantage and the disadvantage of being third behind Dr. Posley and Dr. Martin is that a lot of the categories are going to sound similar. So I'll try to hit some of the differentiation points. If I were to square up the dimensions of issues that are facing our students in terms of needs, unmet needs, and great areas for impact for them and for the organization, it would be very, very similar. I would stress again, just for a moment, because we have so many students that are on campus in terms of residential types of situations, the housing situation, as well as really what you've heard around the food insecurity and mental health. Let me just dwell for a moment on mental health. I see this as different than what we've ever faced before. Prior to COVID, college students were experiencing really a lot of mental health epidemic proportion level issues. There's no question about that. This has been increasing and is well documented for college students across all sectors. It's really unfortunate. And what we have seen in terms of these mental health challenges is this is exacerbated because of family circumstances, employment, and so many other areas affecting, just something as basic as what's my future going to be with an education in terms of employment, those basic types of questions. So this has come up to become the #1 issue for college presidents and chancellors across the country in a survey that was just done this month of the American Council on Education. What we're also seeing, and what's fundamentally different, not only that it's the #1 issue, but it's actually now where we see faculty and staff mental health issues being quite acute. So this is something that led me, as I had a town hall yesterday on our campus, to emphasize again our employee assistance program, the ways it can be accessed, the different types of resources that are available, and just how individuals ought to engage in that. Similarly, much like what you've heard, the types of socioeconomic support, the types of advising, the types of financial resources, the types of psychiatric help, the types of counseling services, a number of different things that we've been providing, not only at UWM, but really in the UW system, paying more attention to this, having our regents and having others recognize the importance of this has been vital. So these are some of the things that really address that foundational issue. If we don't have mental and physical health, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of that cocoon, that culture of safety and health, we can't learn. And that's just absolutely critical, whether you're at MPS, MATC, or UWM. Building on that, in terms of the federal CARES funding, we also have distributed funds to our students. It was $8.5 million to almost 9,000 students, and this has been a godsend for them. We had so many students who immediately lost their jobs. They immediately lost on-campus employment or off-campus employment. You can appreciate the types of jobs that the majority of our students have. And I think when I say we, it's really collectively between MATC and UWM. Our students are largely first generation, very diverse. We're very proud of the access institutions that our organizations have, and that really is what public education is all about. We are so fortunate to live in a community that has had such philanthropic support. we can speak to for our MCube students specifically. We gave almost $300,000 in emergency grants to students from MATC or UWM this year that was specifically earmarked for them. From the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, another $50,000 specifically for completion types of work, $90,000 in graduate diversity and inclusion scholarships. Myself and my wife said, this is not enough. We started the Chancellor Student Success Foundation. So many of you have contributed. And between that and our emergency grants, we're at about $750,000 that we've been able to distribute and give to students. That's above and beyond the millions of dollars that we give to scholarships for students every year. I won't go through all the same dimensions of technology, but the same things could be said in terms of the numbers, the software issues, the hardware issues, the digital divide. One key point that I'd like to differentiate is that the needs for hardware and software are bigger than what any one institution can address. And this is why we've been working with the city, the county, and really even at the state level to try to find greater access to broadband, to have bigger access, better access for the types of learning that increasingly is happening today, and frankly is going to be with us for a while. Similar to the financial aid aspects around FAFSA, students have to have with their families greater information provided to be able to become eligible for federal loans and grants. And that has been a huge win for us with MCubed, working also with Milwaukee Succeeds in terms of great partnerships. We have really lifted the numbers of students that have access to those funds. We need to continue that. We're actually a leading city today because of the combined efforts. The final comment that I'll make is around our DACA students. DACA students are students, as you know, who don't have eligibility for a lot of the traditional federal and state funding opportunities. And of course, employment is challenged and a number of other things. So while they may be ineligible for CARES or other types of aspects, our emergency funds and other special funds that we've set aside have been able to help. And I know the same thing would be true for Vicki at MATC in terms of really finding support for individuals who otherwise wouldn't be able to get it. Our Roberto Hernandez Center on our campus does also assist our DACA students for access to those and many other types of resources. So those are some of the major needs and how we're meeting them. But I have to tell you, there's a lot of unmet needs, and our students will continue to really be challenged in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Posley, Dr. Martin, Dr. Mone, for sharing the needs of our students. And there truly is a commonality of all of them. You know, the mental health issue is a very real issue that impacts the entire family. The digital divide, making sure that students have access in this virtual environment. If we don't have access, we can't do our homework, we can't have our lessons. And then just the basic needs of understanding that we truly will have people that are walking around with not enough to eat, without a place to sleep. And I appreciate you all looking forward to finding ways to address those needs. I'd like to transition a bit to have 5 minutes for questions. And Tony Tagliaviglia is standing by with the questions. And if Tony, if you can share what you are seeing with the group, and we can see who's up to answer questions.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Start with a question from Rachel from WTMJ Television, and I think this is something that could be answered by everyone, but perhaps maybe first directed at Dr. Posley. How are schools measuring online engagement? Do they monitor who's logged on, off, and for how long? So perhaps that's something we could start with Dr. Posley, but the higher educational leaders may have a thought as well.
Thank you. We are monitoring just as if we were in session. We have what we call a synchronous time. That's when the time that we spend with the teacher and the student interaction. And then we have asynchronous time. So when a teacher may place a child in a group or work with their peers in a breakout room or whatever the situation or assignments that is given, all of that time is monitored. We do the same things that we have done in traditional school with attendance around making sure that attendance is taken in the AM and PM attendance. So we're looking at it the same way and making sure that we're looking at attendance rates as well the same way. And teachers are constantly checking in with their students. But the great thing that's happening in the virtual setting, that we have any number of other educators that are working along with our teachers, as well as checking in on students. That paraprofessionals, they may have the guidance counselor, art, music, physical education, library media specialists, science teachers, and there's a number of individuals that are checking in to make sure and ensuring attendance and making sure that children are actively staying engaged and locked into learning.
Well, I could add that for colleges, the faculty take attendance. It's really needed for financial aid purposes. But for us, the important measures are they completing their courses? Are they finishing up their credits? Are they then enrolling in the next semester? And are they being retained? Those are the important pieces. And we have staff. We now have for each of our program career areas, we have a team of folks that are working on making sure that we have retention. And if students are not showing up, we'll do a retention alert, and we'll have an advisor or retention coach reach out to those students, as well as the faculty do that as well, to ensure that we can figure out if there's any specific reasons why students are struggling to attend courses virtually. Maybe they're having trouble with the equipment, or there's things going on in their home life that the retention coach can help with. So I would add that.
And I would just echo one thought. That's kind of an interesting add. We monitor through face-to-face activities, the type of work that's being done, when homework assignments are completed, the actual completion of the credit work, much like what you've heard Dr. Martin say. But we also have added in a lot of what we call supplemental instruction, to where students can work asynchronously to really reinforce the lesson plans, really reinforce what they're learning, and have additional chat rooms with graduate assistants and other TA types of support. So those are the additional things that really actually are reinforcing the online environment, that give us some additional tools, additional ways to reach out, which students in the normal environment historically would not have tapped into. They would not have felt as comfortable, but today we're seeing some real positive gains through that. And so there are some wins, and I do want to point that aspect out as well.
Thanks, Dr. Money. The next question is from Brett Lemoyne from Channel 6, and he is asking, pivot has been a buzzword in education during the pandemic. What type of impact do you see on students and staff when a school, college, or university switches frequently between in-person and virtual learning? So I think anyone and potentially all could answer that question, but I think you may want to clarify whether that type of switching has happened frequently at your institution.
Maybe I'll jump in and start. So I'm not third this time. We have been fortunate so far, meaning that we pivoted in the spring and then we have been consistent through the fall. Obviously, there's some pressure, and I'm talking to college presidents, chancellors across the country, as well as in the state, and we're all evaluating post-Thanksgiving what's the right decision. And that depends on a number of factors. How many of your students live out of state? How many students live on or off campus? And a number of other things. What's your safety on campus? We do not plan at this point to pivot again. Obviously, if health circumstances require it, we don't see that. But I will tell you, the students are increasingly agile. And I think that our faculty and staff have been able to do that as well. We're very fortunate that we were already having a large percentage of classes online. We had over 40% of our students who already had, before the pandemic, at least one or more of their classes online. And we also have over 1,000 faculty who are certified for online education. So it's really helped an awful lot. So the pivot is not as pivotal. It's not as problematic for us. And we do plan on sticking pretty much the same thing like Dr. Martin and Dr. Posley described through the spring semester. So the back and forth has not been a major issue for us.
Right. I would just add that for us, for the in-person, and about less than 20% of our courses are offered in person, and we've had some positive cases. Luckily, so far we haven't had any spread, but when we have those positive cases, we do want to close down and make sure that we have a safe and healthy environment, and we want to do all the protocols that we've put in place. I think that what's really helped with the pivot back and forth, at least for the in-person, has been that we've prepared. We've prepared students, we've prepared faculty and staff to be ready for that. And I think that it's actually been something that has gone smoothly so far. It's like, okay, well, now we need to do this. Remember, we talked about that we may need to do this, but then we'll be back in a week or two. So I think they've been prepared, and I think that helps with some of the uncertainty that is during this period. Is if you do have a plan in place, it really makes a difference.
And with the Milwaukee Public Schools on March 17th, we made our first pivot from instruction face-to-face to materials and packages getting out to families, because we thought it would be a short period of time. After we found out it would be a longer period of time, we made a pivot to online learning. And we have kind of stayed there throughout, but also to pivot again during the summer to do our summer school session online. And then also with hopes of going back to face-to-face. And we found out that we would not be going back to face-to-face right away. So we immediately pivoted into this virtual learning model that we find ourselves in right now, and we'll be staying there until further notice. However, I know that we have, like Dr. Martin and Dr. Moni has said, this has really been something that we have worked with our school communities on and around. And I truly think that the pivot that we have made back and forth has really, made us for a stronger organization because of it. And we are able now to be able to just on a moment's notice to make that pivot, but also have all of our scholars and community to make that pivot along with us.
Great, thanks. And I think we have time for one more question, knowing that we're coming up on the end. Just to answer this briefly, though it's a complicated question. Sorry, Leska, the Business Journal is asking, now that we're a couple of months into the school year, what are you seeing in terms of the financial impact to your institutions? What are you expecting moving forward in terms of your financial needs, and how will you address them?
I'll go ahead and jump in if others aren't. The pandemic has, for UW-Milwaukee, had several impacts. Immediately, we had increased costs in the spring because we had to refund residence hall and dining fees. So there were immediate outlays for that, as well as the impact of reduced enrollments that came in the fall, as well as increased cost associated with PPE. In addition, because we're a public institution, we have had state budget cuts in the spring that affected our last year. Within 6 weeks of the end of the fiscal year, we had a significant cut, and we know we're going to have a budget lapse this year. So the effects have been pretty significant, and we are engaging right now in a $30 million cost reduction effort. So that's for this academic year. That's substantial, and that's major impact on us. That is net of the CARES funding that we received. Obviously, we hope post-election, Congress and Senate come together and pass a bill for additional CARES funding or additional supplemental funds early in 2021. But it's quite staggering. And I think higher education, if you look at the headlines in the New York Times earlier this week, in the Chronicle of Education earlier this week, they continue to be the same thing. It is a staggering nightmare for higher education across the country. We're not immune from that. And that's why it's so vitally important for us to continue to recognize, I think, the work that we're doing together and helping each other out, learning from best practices, recognizing that those students in MPS are our future, not only our future students at MATC and UWM, but really our future for the workforce, future for our citizenry, for all the different things that we need in so many ways. And so it's critically important that we continue to reinforce the practices that we're working on collaboratively through the MCube Forum.
Yeah. In addition to what Mark just shared, I would say that we knew that our enrollments were going to be down. We had planned for it. and they're still below what we thought they were going to be. We were a little bit optimistic, thinking that more students might come. If they didn't want to travel, that maybe they didn't want to go out of state, that they would stay home, take some of our courses virtually. We had some of that, but not to the numbers that we were hoping for. So the other piece of it with CARES Act funding, I think that community colleges in particular, because of the definition, the way that it was funded, have been affected adversely because we have so many part-time students. And the formula was based a lot on how much funding you got was on how many full-time students you had. And so since 90% of our students are part-time, that certainly we did not get probably what we needed to get to cover a lot of the costs. But as you heard, I mean, we know there's going to be state cuts. We know that going forward, we're going to have to, we've already made some cuts to our budget. We will continue to monitor that. But we're hopeful that with some additional strategies and I think demonstrating to the residents of our community that coming to college is a safe place to come. We are following all the protocols, so far so good that that we can continue to attract more students. We need to, especially students of color, to our institution and to keep them safe virtually and to give them the equipment and the support that they need. But it requires a lot more funding. The contact tracing alone has just been unbelievable in terms of costs for hiring additional employees, ensuring that we have limited access on our campus so that we have temperature checks when people come in has required us to, again, hire some additional people and use the limited CARES funding that we have since, as I mentioned earlier, we're using most of it for our students. So those are just some of the additional ways that this has impacted our campus.
And with the Milwaukee Public Schools, the budget was not developed with the pandemic in mind. The pandemic has been put on top of all of the things that we already have to do. And the current setup was not established to handle COVID-19. And when I talk about that, it's a number of areas that just comes to mind, such as technology, having the appropriate technology staff, making sure that we are able to buy all of the technology materials, hardware, software, things of that nature. And then on looking at busing, we bus a large majority of our students, and now we would have to, we set for 3-tier busing, we might be doing 6-tier busing because of the number of students that we can get on the bus due to social distancing. Looking also at the lens of PPE and providing those services, providing all of the support that's needed in those schools to make sure that we have signage and ventilation and clean air that's flowing through as well. And then on top of the contact tracing and making sure that we have contact tracers, and for a large organization that is really a task in itself. And then looking at this whole thing around enrollment, not expecting enrollment to land the way it landed, but looking at enrollment. Our staff, needing more staff to be able to meet the unique needs of our students, and talking about the instructional resources and instructional materials that's needed. It's just like turning the school, flipping the school district on its head and starting all over again, planning one way, but also planning another way to support all of our learners as we go forward. So those are some of the things that the Milwaukee Public Schools has been faced with from a financial standpoint that was not accounted for.
Thanks for the great questions. With the time that we have, we'll wrap it there. But as I put in the chat, we'll work to answer the questions that people have shared in the Q&A and the chat by email following up afterwards. And so if the sponsors just wanted to say something very brief to close, and then we'll hand it back to Jackie.
I will jump in really briefly and thank everybody for participating today. I don't want to sound repetitive, but we are so proud of the work that we're doing together. Building this foundation has been something that we've learned an awful lot from. We've seen great indicators. I encourage you to take a look at our website I encourage you to take a look at what we're doing for the region, for our students. And I do want to plug one thing that is, we think, a major win. It's called Moonshot for Equity, and it builds on the work that we're doing with MATC and MPS that really seeks to completely eliminate the achievement gaps in this region. We want to have every single student be able to achieve a 2-year or 4-year college degree without any differences based on background or economics or any differences that individuals bring. So we're incredibly excited to work with Education Advisory Board. This is a major national undertaking, and we're the first region in the country to do that. And so I'm really grateful for the leadership of the individuals at MATC, MPS, as well as our partners at Carthage College and UW Parkside. So this is a big deal that we recognize going forward for the future. And thanks everybody for being involved with all that we're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would just like to thanks, Mark, for mentioning that. Really appreciate it. Under your great leadership, I know we're really going to move the needle and make a difference in our community, and that's why this particular partnership is really so critical, so important. We want to make sure that we set the expectation, and we see the success of students going through our 3 institutions successfully. We want to make sure that we're building that workforce pipeline that's so important. There's so much going on in our community that seems to be working against it, but we're uniting to make sure that we work together. And there's so many folks in our advisory board and others in our community that Mark mentioned earlier that are helping us to work on this as a region, but as a city, as our community. It's just critical and vitally important. I just appreciate you being here today.
And I would like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Martin, Dr. Moni, for being thought partners as we reach out to our great community. And as we always say, it truly takes a village, and I appreciate the village approach from our broader community and the support for the philanthropy in the city and everyone that has worked along with us, the 3 institutions, to move us forward and to move our students and our community forward. And I will say that this is some real tough times, uncertain times, but we will get through it, and we will be better and greater for it. And I just want to thank all of you for your time and attention to these 3 great institutions that make a difference in our community.
Dr. Posley and Marla Bernard, Dr. Martin, and Tony Talavia. I always get his name mixed up. I'm so sorry, Tony. I just call him Tony. And Dr. Moni and Phyllis King. I want to thank you all for all the work you did to put this on. I truly appreciate it, and the passion and compassion I heard in every conversation I had with all of you about making a difference in children's lives is it's amazing, and it just warms my heart. You may be wondering how you can get involved in supporting students, so let's talk about that. The M-Cubed Advisory Board members want you to know that there are multiple ways you or your organization can help. You've taken the first step by learning about the challenges faced by our students. Now for action. First, connect with us. Be certain to use the websites for each of our institutions and for M-Cubed, and sign up for our newsletters and updates. An email you receive right after this webinar will give you a direct link to sign up for the M-Cubed Connections newsletter. This will let you know what we are doing, what we're working on, and allow you to respond to targeted requests. Second, use your voice to advocate for increased resources and support for our students. This includes those offering social services, and especially mental health, food, housing, and other emergency support. The needs of our students and their families are real and go beyond the scope of what these 3 great institutions can provide alone. Where you can advocate for public resources to support either the institutions or our community, we need you to share the message of how critical the needs are. For those who wish to provide direct financial support, we will follow up this session with a list of donation opportunities that include funding for students to cover emergency funds and needs, scholarships, and computers. For those who would like to respond to a special project, we have one for you. As a true M-Cubed initiative, 92 high school seniors, I'm sorry, I don't see anybody, but 92 high school seniors are participating in M-Cubed College Connections, which means they are attending virtual college courses at MATC and UWM and expect to complete 10 college credits this semester. As we are unable to meet in person, we sent a care package with a few items to encourage their continued success. Water bottle, snacks, a personal note of encouragement, and a few other things. If you wish to be a part of creating and assembling the next care package, please email Vicki Turner at turner@uwm.edu. That's turner@uwm.edu, and use the header care package. That message will also be in the email you receive after this webinar. As an interested community, you have responded to this type of request before. Previously, we requested for you to encourage parents to engage in the M-Cubed Parent Institute program, and you reached out to let them know about the support for this initiative. Thank you again for your interest and support. As an attendee of this event, you will automatically be invited to our January event focused on equity in education at MPS, MATC, and UWM. I hope you can join us for this next critical conversation. Please mask up, socially distance, and stay safe. Have a great afternoon and evening, and we look forward to virtually seeing you in January.